There's a moment in every life where pressure feels unbearable, where the weight of responsibility, fear, or uncertainty threatens to crush you. For most people, this moment leads to panic, hesitation, or collapse. But there are some who seem unshaken, who perform with clarity even in the most hostile environments. When you are under pressure, when your heart is pounding in your chest and your thoughts are racing, the first thing to collapse is not your strength or your skill, it is your state. And your state is governed by your nervous system. Every moment of stress sends a signal from your body to your brain saying, fight, flee, or freeze. That cascade begins with your breath. Breath is not just the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. It is the steering wheel of your entire nervous system. Every inhale, every exhale, every pause in between is telling your body and your brain how to respond to the world. This is why elite soldiers, when everything around them is chaos, return to one of the most primal rhythms of life: breathing. Because the way you breathe determines the way you think, and the way you think determines the way you act. When you take short, shallow, frantic breaths, your nervous system believes you are under attack. It floods you with adrenaline, narrows your vision, stiffens your muscles. But when you control your breath, you control the entire cascade. You send a message back to your brain: I am not drowning, I am not broken, I am here, and I am in command. Science has shown us that specific breathing patterns can directly regulate your autonomic nervous system. The double inhale followed by a long exhale, for instance, immediately lowers stress by offloading carbon dioxide and activating the parasympathetic branch of your nervous system, the one designed for calm and control. Slow, deliberate breaths lengthen the space between stimulus and response, giving you the power to choose action rather than simply react. That is not philosophy. That is biology. And yet it is also something deeper. It is the reminder that you are not a slave to the chaos around you, nor to the chaos within you. You have been given the ability to command your own state through something as simple, as sacred as breath. Every sacred tradition in history has placed profound emphasis on the breath. From the prayers whispered in silence to the chants that rise in unison, from meditation to worship, breath has always been seen as the bridge between body and spirit, between earth and heaven. Modern science confirms what ancient wisdom always declared: breath is power. To inhale is to draw life, to exhale is to release burden, and to control that rhythm is to align both your biology and your spirit with strength. This is not accidental. It was designed this way. Breath is the key given to you so that when the world shakes, you do not have to. When a Navy SEAL faces the most extreme conditions, when darkness surrounds them, when danger presses in, when every instinct screams to panic, they do not surrender to fear, they return to their breath. They use controlled rhythms to keep their heart rate steady, their mind sharp, their vision wide. And what they prove on the battlefield is what you can prove in your own life. The same biology that carries them through combat is the biology that can carry you through loss, through failure, through rejection, through every moment when you are tested. Your breath is not weaker than theirs. Your nervous system is not weaker than theirs. What separates them is training, and training is available to you. Controlled breathing is not about escaping stress. It is about mastering it, because stress will come. The storms of life do not ask for permission. They will arrive at your doorstep whether you are ready or not. The question is not whether you can avoid them, but whether you can stand in the middle of them and remain unshaken. And the first step in that mastery is reclaiming the power of your breath. The power of the breath is not only physiological but also symbolic. It teaches you that control is not always about the external. You may not control the market, the battlefield, the courtroom, or the storm, but you can control your state. You can choose not to let the world dictate your inner rhythm. Breath is the declaration that even when everything outside is chaos, everything inside can be still. It is the reminder that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the mastery of state within conflict. And when you take control of your breath, you take control of the gateway to every other function of your brain. You regain access to your prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational thought, the part of you that makes decisions and calculates outcomes. You expand your vision, literally and metaphorically, so that you no longer see only the immediate threat, but the wider field of opportunity. You activate circuits of resilience and endurance, wiring your brain to stay engaged instead of collapsing into despair. All of this begins not with something outside of you, but with the breath that was placed inside you from your first moment of life. Breath is not weakness. Breath is not background. Breath is the front line of discipline, the front line of resilience, the front line of victory. And when you master it, you stop being a slave to your biology and start becoming its commander. You stop letting stress be the master of your fate and start making stress your servant, a tool that sharpens you instead of shattering you. This is why those who train their breath are never ordinary. They are steady when others break. They are calm when others panic. They are sharp when others collapse. They are not superhuman. They are simply aligned with the design of their own nervous system, trained in the truth that biology is not your limitation but your weapon. Breath is the bridge. Breath is the anchor. Breath is the proof that you were never meant to crumble under stress, but to rise above it. Fear is one of the most primal forces in the human experience. It is written into the very fabric of your brain and body, a system designed to keep you alive. When you sense threat, when something in your environment feels dangerous or uncertain, ancient circuits in your brain light up. The amygdala sends a signal of alarm, your heart races, your vision narrows, and your body prepares to either fight or flee. This is not weakness. This is survival. But the truth is, survival and leadership are not the same thing. To survive is to escape danger. To lead is to face danger with clarity and purpose. The difference lies in whether fear owns you or you own fear. Navy SEALs and other elite warriors are not fearless. They experience the same spikes of adrenaline, the same tightening in the chest, the same voice whispering of danger. What separates them is their training. They have learned how to reframe fear, how to use it as fuel instead of a chain. Neuroscience shows us that the brain is not a fixed machine. It is plastic. It learns. And what it learns about fear depends on what you teach it. If you teach your brain that fear means retreat, then every time stress rises, retreat will follow. But if you teach your brain that fear is information, that it is a signal to focus rather than to collapse, then fear becomes a tool, not a tyrant. This is not just theory. In controlled experiments, scientists have shown that repeated exposure to fear under safe conditions can rewire the circuits of the amygdala. The brain learns that what once triggered panic no longer requires the same level of alarm. This is why controlled exposure is at the heart of training programs for elite operators. They step again and again into discomfort, into chaos, into environments that trigger stress until their nervous system adapts. What once sent their heart racing now sharpens their mind. What once felt like danger now feels like preparation. Fear, then, is not your enemy. Fear is the raw material of growth. It is the weight that builds the muscle of resilience. When you reframe fear, when you stop asking, how do I get rid of this feeling? And start asking, how do I use this feeling? You tap into the biology that was always meant to serve you. Fear increases focus. Fear sharpens awareness. Fear can either narrow you into paralysis or channel you into precision. The choice is not whether fear will come. The choice is what you will do with it when it arrives. Even the most ancient scriptures speak to this. Again and again, the words, do not fear, are not commands to feel nothing. They are calls to courage, to faith, to trust in a strength beyond your own. The presence of fear does not mean the absence of faith. It means the opportunity to exercise it. In the same way, neuroscience does not promise that fear will vanish. It promises that fear can be trained. Your brain is designed not to erase fear, but to reshape your relationship to it. Every time you face fear and remain, every time you stand in its presence and breathe, every time you refuse to run, your brain rewires. Neurons fire together and wire together, building new pathways that say, this sensation does not mean defeat. It means readiness. Over time, the alarms that once sent you spiraling become the signals that anchor you. Fear becomes not the voice that controls you, but the bell that wakes you up, sharpens you, directs you. Think about the moments in your life when fear was loudest. Perhaps it was before stepping onto a stage, before taking a risk in business, before having a hard conversation, before walking into an unknown future. In those moments, your heart did not race because you were weak. It raced because your nervous system was preparing you. What you needed was not to silence the fear, but to train your mind to reinterpret it. The same biology that can paralyze you can also propel you. The difference is perspective, and perspective is trainable. When Navy SEALs enter hostile territory, their bodies react the same way yours does under stress. But through repetition, through controlled exposure, through reframing, they have taught their brains that fear is not a stop sign but a green light. You can do the same in your daily life. You can step into challenges instead of running from them. You can practice reframing fear as focus. You can see the quickened heartbeat not as a sign of collapse, but as a signal of energy. You can see the tension not as weakness, but as readiness. Fear will visit you. It will always visit you because it was designed to, but you are not meant to bow to it. You are meant to master it. You are meant to take the circuits of your brain that were built for survival and align them with purpose. And when you do, fear ceases to be the weight that drags you down and becomes the force that sharpens your edge. This is not denial. This is discipline. It is the training of your mind and nervous system to look at the storm and say, I was built for this. A fear can be fire that burns or fire that forges. In your biology, it is the same flame. The outcome depends on your training, on your willingness to reframe, on your decision to step into fear until it no longer rules you. And when you learn to do that, when you stop running from fear and start rising with it, you discover that fear was never there to destroy you. It was there to reveal you. Focus is the ultimate force multiplier. Strength without focus is wasted energy. Talent without focus is untapped potential. Even courage without focus can scatter into chaos. Your brain was built to direct energy, attention, and action into a single point. And when you harness that ability, you unlock a power that feels unstoppable. The human brain is not limitless in what it can pay attention to at any given moment. In fact, neuroscience shows us that attention is like a spotlight. Wherever you aim it, circuits in your brain begin to strengthen, resources are allocated, and performance rises. The tragedy is that most people live with their spotlight flickering from one distraction to another, never sustained, never concentrated, always divided. But when you train focus, you train your mind to stay steady under pressure, and that transforms everything. Navy SEALs train focus not in comfort but in chaos, because it is easy to concentrate in silence, it is easy to breathe when nothing challenges you. But the brain's real test comes when you are tired, stressed, under fire, overwhelmed by noise and uncertainty. The battlefield does not pause to give you a quiet room for clarity, and neither does life. So they deliberately train in distraction, deliberately put themselves into environments of stress, and then practice locking attention on a single task. What this does to the brain is extraordinary. Circuits in the prefrontal cortex, the very part of the brain that governs decision, making, and goal-directed behavior, become resilient under fire. Instead of collapsing when chaos rises, those circuits get sharper. That is why they can execute precision under conditions where most people would fall apart, and the same principle applies to your life. If you only ever seek focus in perfect conditions, you will always be a victim of distraction when stress arrives. But if you deliberately build drills of focus under pressure, if you practice directing your attention in the middle of noise, in the middle of discomfort, you rewire your brain to hold steady in the storms. Something as simple as setting a timer, creating a challenging environment, and locking onto a single task until the clock runs out can build this capacity. What begins as strain becomes strength. What begins as scattered attention becomes a mind like a blade. This training of focus is not only mental but also spiritual. Every sacred tradition teaches the power of fixing your eyes, your heart, your soul on something greater than yourself. Distraction has always been the enemy of devotion, and devotion is just another word for disciplined focus. To pray is to focus. To meditate is to focus. To worship is to focus. It is the act of silencing the noise within and without to align your mind with what is higher. Modern science echoes the same truth in different language. Focus is not accidental. It is trainable. It is neuroplasticity in action. Each time you bring your attention back from distraction, each time you hold your gaze steady when everything in you wants to scatter, you are literally strengthening circuits in your brain that govern discipline, endurance, and clarity. There is also a biological link between focus and stress. When adrenaline and cortisol rise in moments of chaos, they push the brain toward a state of hypervigilance. You start noticing everything, scanning for danger, unable to stay with one thing. That is survival, but it is not victory. To override that, you need to engage your prefrontal cortex, the region that tells the rest of the brain. This is what matters right now. Ignore the noise. And the way to do that is through deliberate focus drills. When you practice focus under pressure, you are not simply building willpower. You are rewiring your brain to take command of your biology in moments when it would otherwise command you. Consider how many people lose battles not because they lacked strength, but because they lost focus. The athlete who panicked at the wrong moment, the leader who became overwhelmed by noise, the student who collapsed under distraction. It was never a lack of ability. It was the inability to direct that ability with clarity. But when you train focus, you make your mind a weapon. You make it disciplined, directed, unwavering. And this is not just performance. This is worship. This is obedience to the design of your brain and spirit, which were never made for scattering but for alignment, never made for fragmentation but for devotion. Focus is power because it transforms moments of chaos into opportunities for clarity. When distractions swirl, when anxiety rises, when options multiply, the ability to say, "This is what matters now, and everything else can wait," is the difference between those who collapse and those who conquer. That ability is not random. It is not given only to the few. It is built through training, through repetition, through the deliberate practice of bringing your mind back again and again until it obeys. The scriptures remind us that a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. That is not a condemnation. It is a description of the brain without focus. Divided attention creates instability. But single-mindedness, focused discipline that creates strength unshakable. Neuroscience proves the same principle. The more you sustain attention on one thing, the more your neural circuits adapt to make that sustained focus easier. What begins as a fight becomes second nature. What begins as struggle becomes habit, and habit becomes identity. You stop trying to focus and you start becoming someone who is naturally focused. Training focus under pressure is a declaration. It says to the world and to yourself, I am not a slave to distraction. I am not a prisoner of chaos. I have been given a mind and I will master it. It is the daily decision to align with discipline instead of impulse, with clarity instead of noise. And over time, that decision builds a brain, a spirit, a life that is unstoppable. Resilience is not built in the absence of stress. Resilience is built in the presence of it. The human nervous system is not designed to grow stronger when everything is easy. It is designed to grow stronger when it is tested, when it is stretched, when it is pushed to the edge and then allowed to recover. Just as muscles grow by first being torn down in training, your mind, your spirit, your nervous system adapt by being placed under controlled stress and learning not to break. This is the principle of stress inoculation. And it is not simply a metaphor. It is biology. When you are exposed to stress in small, deliberate doses, your brain and body adapt. Cortisol and adrenaline rise, your heart rate quickens, your focus narrows. But then, as you recover, your system recalibrates. Neural pathways that were once overwhelmed now become more efficient. Circuits that once screamed with alarm now quiet down. The same stress that once felt unbearable becomes manageable, and the next time you face it, you are steadier, calmer, more controlled. This is how Navy SEALs train. They do not avoid stress. They seek it in controlled environments over and over until their nervous system adapts. They inoculate themselves against chaos. This principle is not reserved for the battlefield. It is true for every life. The person who never steps into discomfort never learns how to handle it. The person who avoids pressure never learns how to thrive under it. And the tragedy is that the world will deliver stress whether you are trained or not. Challenges will come. Storms will arrive. If you have trained, those storms will sharpen you. If you have not, they will break you. Resilience is not a gift you are born with. It is a capacity you build through repeated exposure, through deliberate practice, through refusing to run from difficulty and instead leaning into it. Neuroscience shows that repeated, controlled exposure to stress changes the way the amygdala and prefrontal cortex communicate. The amygdala, the alarm system of your brain, fires with less intensity. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational thought, strengthens its command. In practical terms, this means that situations that once triggered panic now trigger focus. Problems that once seemed overwhelming now seem solvable. Stress does not disappear, but your relationship to it changes. You no longer collapse under its weight. You carry it. You harness it. You use it. This is not just science, but sacred truth. In every faith tradition, resilience is seen not as avoidance of trials, but endurance through them. The scriptures speak of perseverance producing character, of trials refining like fire, of storms testing the foundation of a house. The message is clear: the presence of struggle is not a curse. It is the process by which strength is forged. Neuroscience simply provides the biological confirmation. Your brain and body are designed to adapt under pressure. What feels like breaking is often the beginning of building. Stress inoculation is not reckless exposure. It is not throwing yourself into chaos without preparation. It is deliberate, incremental training. Just as a vaccine introduces a small dose of a virus to build immunity, stress inoculation introduces controlled doses of discomfort to build mental immunity. Cold exposure, high-intensity training, fasting, public speaking, taking on challenges that stretch you beyond comfort. These are not punishments, but practices. Each time you do them, you are telling your nervous system, this stress will not destroy me, and slowly your system believes it. Most people misunderstand resilience. They think it means never feeling shaken, never doubting, never struggling. But resilience is not the absence of stress. It is the mastery of recovery. It is the ability to face the storm and stand back up after it passes. It is the decision to lean into discomfort so that when greater discomfort comes, you are ready. And the science is clear: the more you train your nervous system in controlled stress, the less you will be overwhelmed by uncontrolled stress. Think about the challenges you face in your life right now, the difficult conversations, the risks you are afraid to take, the situations that make your heart pound and your hands sweat. Those are not signs of weakness. They are opportunities for training. Each time you step into them, you are inoculating yourself against future fear. Each time you endure them, you are rewriting the story your brain tells itself about what you can handle. And over time, those stories become unshakable truths. The difference between those who collapse under pressure and those who thrive under it is not that one feels stress and the other does not. It is that one has trained for stress and the other has not. The Navy SEAL who executes a mission under fire has a nervous system trained to interpret chaos as normal. You can train your nervous system the same way. It will not be through bullets and combat, but through daily choices to step into discomfort rather than flee from it. Each repetition builds resilience. Each moment of controlled stress is another layer of armor. Resilience built this way is not only biological but also spiritual. It teaches you that you were not created to live in avoidance but in endurance. It teaches you that storms will not define you if you train to stand in them. It teaches you that trials are not interruptions to your life but invitations to your growth. The science and the scriptures agree resilience is not automatic. It is forged, earned, built through the deliberate embrace of challenge. And when you live this way, when you inoculate yourself against stress instead of avoiding it, something profound happens. You stop fearing the storm. You start seeing it as training. You stop praying for an easy path and start preparing for a stronger spirit. And slowly, steadily, you become someone who is not shaken by the weight of life, but strengthened by it. Habits are the invisible architecture of your destiny. Long before success or failure shows itself in the world, it is being constructed in the small, repeated actions of your daily life. Neuroscience reveals that every habit you form is literally etched into the circuits of your brain. Each repetition strengthens neural pathways, making a behavior easier and more automatic. Each lapse weakens those same circuits. What you do consistently, even when it seems small, is shaping the very structure of your nervous system. This is why habits matter more than motivation, more than inspiration, more even than intention. Because motivation rises and falls, but habits hold steady. And when habits are built correctly, they make discipline feel less like a battle and more like a rhythm. The brain has a remarkable capacity called neuroplasticity, the ability to rewire itself in response to repeated behaviors. When you repeat an action, neurons fire together. And when they fire together often enough, they wire together, creating a circuit that becomes faster, stronger, more efficient. This is why learning a new skill feels clumsy at first. The pathways are weak. But through repetition, those pathways strengthen until the action feels natural, less automatic. Habits are simply neuroplasticity at work, either for your growth or for your decline. The tragedy is that most people let their habits form unconsciously. They drift into routines shaped by impulse, by distraction, by culture. Without realizing it, they etch into their brain patterns of procrastination, patterns of avoidance, patterns of mediocrity. And then they wonder why change feels impossible. But the same brain that builds bad habits can also build powerful ones. The same neuroplasticity that enslaves can liberate. The difference is not biology, it is intentionality. You cannot escape the reality of habit, but you can decide whether your habits will serve your highest purpose or sabotage it. Elite warriors understand this truth. They do not wait for inspiration to act. They program their days with disciplines that align with their mission. Wake, train, plan, execute, reflect, repeat it until it becomes identity. They know that in the heat of chaos, it is not motivation that carries you. It is habit. It is the ingrained pathways that tell your body and mind what to do without hesitation. And this is no different for you. The battle you face in life, whether in career, family, faith, or calling, will not be won by one burst of inspiration. It will be won by the quiet, consistent repetition of small habits that transform who you are. Habits also carry a spiritual weight. Scripture reminds us that whatever we sow, we will reap. What is sowing if not the planting of small, daily actions that grow into a harvest? The prayers you repeat, the disciplines you keep, the devotions you practice, these are not wasted motions. They are the engraving of faith into your nervous system, the shaping of your spirit through repetition. Neuroscience calls it neuroplasticity. Faith calls it obedience. Both describe the same principle. What you repeat, you become. Building unbreakable habits begins with understanding how they form. Every habit has a cue, a routine, and a reward. A cue is the trigger that sets the behavior in motion. A routine is the behavior itself. A reward is the outcome that reinforces the cycle. Your brain is constantly seeking efficiency, so it latches onto these loops, carving them into neural pathways. Break the loop and the habit weakens. Strengthen the loop and the habit solidifies. This is not willpower alone. This is design. When you deliberately create cues and rewards around the behaviors you want, you make habits that stick. The power of small habits cannot be overstated. Each repetition might feel insignificant in the moment, but compounded over time, they rewire the brain and reshape destiny. Waking early, keeping a journal, training your body, speaking words of gratitude, dedicating time to prayer, focusing deeply on one task, none of these actions feel like revolutions on their own. But over months and years, they create a mind that is disciplined, a heart that is steady, a life that is unshakable. Neuroscience confirms what wisdom has always said: small daily disciplines lead to great transformation. But building habits also requires endurance. The brain does not change instantly. Circuits strengthen with repetition, often through failure. You may fall, you may relapse, you may miss days, but every return to the habit strengthens the pathway. This is why habits are not about perfection, but persistence. Each time you return, you tell your brain, this is who I am. And eventually your identity shifts. You stop seeing the habit as something you're trying to do and start seeing it as something you are. You do not try to pray. You are someone who prays. You do not try to train. You are someone who trains. Identity emerges from repetition. The most powerful thing about habits is that once they are set, they free you. They remove decision fatigue. They allow you to operate with discipline even when motivation is low. They make excellence the default instead of the exception. And when your habits are aligned with your highest values, they create a life that does not drift but advances, that does not collapse under pressure but remains steadfast. This is why you must choose your habits with intention. Every habit is either training you for weakness or training you for strength. Every repetition is either sowing seeds of mediocrity or seeds of greatness. There is no neutral. Your brain does not remain unchanged. It is always wiring, always adapting, always learning. The question is not whether you will build habits, but whether you will build habits that make you unbreakable. And when you align the science of habit formation with the conviction of faith, when you see habits not as mere routines, but as acts of devotion, as seeds of purpose, as engravings of destiny, then discipline stops being a burden. It becomes worship. It becomes alignment. It becomes the declaration that you were not designed to wander aimlessly, but to live with clarity, with power, with intention. Discipline is not just about grit or willpower. It is not simply the ability to push yourself harder than others or to endure more pain. Discipline, at its deepest level, is alignment. It is the alignment of your biology with your beliefs, of your habits with your higher calling, of your nervous system with your spirit. Neuroscience shows us that the brain is always seeking patterns of efficiency. It wires itself to repeat what you consistently do. Faith shows us that the heart is always seeking alignment with a greater purpose. When you bring these together, when you take the mechanics of neuroplasticity and merge them with the conviction of spiritual discipline, you create a kind of unshakable force. You are no longer driven only by impulse or emotion. You are directed by design. The brain's reward system plays a critical role here. Every time you complete a behavior that aligns with your values, dopamine is released. This is not just pleasure. Dopamine is motivation. It is the neurochemical signal that says, do this again. Most people waste their dopamine on distractions, on shallow pleasures, on habits that bring short-term comfort but long-term weakness. They train their brains to crave what destroys them. But when you tie discipline to a higher purpose, when you associate self-control with meaning, when you see each small act of discipline as service, as devotion, as obedience, you harness dopamine for destiny instead of destruction. The reward is no longer just the action itself, but the alignment with who you were created to be. This is why discipline without meaning eventually collapses. You can push yourself for a while through raw willpower, but when life presses hard, willpower alone is not enough. But discipline tied to something higher, discipline anchored in faith, discipline driven by mission, discipline fueled by conviction. That kind of discipline is unbreakable. It does not depend on how you feel. It does not fade when motivation fades. It is rooted in identity, in belief, in eternity. Neuroscience gives you the mechanism. Faith gives you the reason. Together, they make discipline unstoppable. Think about the circuits in your brain as paths in a forest. Every time you act, you walk a path. Walk it often enough and it becomes clear, automatic, easy to follow. This is neuroplasticity. But the path you choose is not random. It is shaped by your values, by your vision, by what you believe matters most. If you train your brain to walk the path of distraction, of indulgence, of laziness, then that is the path you will follow when life gets hard. But if you train it to walk the path of devotion, of courage, of self-control, then when pressure comes, your feet will know where to go. Discipline, then, is not just training the brain, it is training the spirit to choose the right path again and again until it becomes identity. Even sacred writings speak to this principle. Fasting, prayer, meditation, devotion, all are disciplines that train not just the body, but the mind and spirit. They are repetitions that engrave faith into your very biology, aligning your nervous system with your beliefs. Modern science now confirms what ancient wisdom declared. Discipline transforms you at the cellular level. It reshapes circuits in the brain, strengthens pathways of resilience, builds patterns of focus. But beyond that, it reminds you daily that your life is not your own, that every act of discipline is an act of alignment with something higher. And this alignment brings freedom. Most people see discipline as restriction, as chains, as limitation. But true discipline is liberation. It frees you from being ruled by impulse, by weakness, by chaos. It frees you from the tyranny of your emotions. It frees you from the drift of distraction. When you are disciplined, you are not less free. You are more free because you are no longer a slave to what is temporary. You are anchored in what is eternal. Neuroscience describes this as top-down control, the prefrontal cortex governing the impulses of the limbic system. Faith describes it as dying to the flesh to live by the spirit. Different language, same truth. Discipline is alignment, and alignment is freedom. There is also a profound peace in this kind of discipline. When your actions align with your beliefs, when your habits align with your mission, there is no inner conflict. Your mind is not at war with your heart. Your spirit is not at war with your body. You are whole, integrated, undivided. And that wholeness gives you strength. It makes you resilient under pressure because you are not scattered. You are not torn in multiple directions. You are united within yourself and with your calling. That is why discipline is not just about what you do, but about who you are becoming. Each act of alignment makes you whole. Each repetition engraves integrity into your nervous system. Discipline also creates legacy. The circuits you build in your brain today will shape the life you live tomorrow. The habits you establish will ripple into generations because the discipline of one life often becomes the foundation for many. The soldier who trains with discipline inspires those who follow. The parent who lives with discipline shapes the identity of their children. The leader who governs with discipline leaves a mark on history. This is why discipline cannot be reduced to mere self-improvement. It is not just about you. It is about everyone who will be touched by your life. Neuroscience shows that habits ripple socially, that behaviors spread through networks. Faith shows that your obedience is never just personal, but generational. Discipline builds more than a life. It builds a legacy. And when you see discipline this way, as both scientific and sacred, as both biological and spiritual, it stops being optional. It becomes essential. It becomes the path by which you align with your design, fulfill your purpose, honor your calling. Each repetition is not wasted. Each habit is not small. Each act of self-control is a seed of destiny. Discipline is not chains. It is wings. It is not punishment. It is preparation. It is not about restriction, but alignment, not about denial, but devotion, not about losing, but about winning the only battle that matters, the battle for your mind, your spirit, your destiny.